Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. It is so good to be hanging out with you today. We have a special guest that I'm going to introduce you to in a moment, Kelly McDowell, and we've been having a really great chat before we've jumped on, and I'm really looking forward to introducing her to you. And she's a new friend of ours here at Voice Essentials, and so it's going to be great to jump in. And I just realized as before I hit record that, you know, Kelly and I got so caught up in talking about, you know, life and those sorts of things that we didn't even talk about the subject matter today. So it could be really interesting. I'm sure we'll be both fine. We are going to be talking about tone and tongue and physiology and those sorts of things, and we'll get into that in a moment. Before we do, though, hey, I want to just let you know next week, let you know what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks. Next week, we're going to be doing a mini topic. I want to talk next week about effective practice techniques. And, you know, time is of the essence these days, isn't it? I mean, our number one commodity in life is time, in part because once you've spent it, you can't get it back. And so I want your vocal practice to be as effective and efficient as it possibly can. And it won't surprise you to know that I've got a few ideas that I think you'll find really helpful. So tune in next week and we'll talk about those things. And then on top of all of that, the week following that, so in 2 weeks, I had told you we're going to be having Kate Fraser-Neely on the show, and she's unable to join. She is going to join us. She is going to join us, but she's going to join us probably in about 6 months' time. She's got a lot on her plate at the moment, and anyway, she's got a new project that she's preparing, and we thought that the best time would be to connect in 6 months. So anyway, her colleague, Nancy Bowes, is going to be joining us in 2 weeks' time, and she is going to be talking with us about confidence, developing that, you know, healthy singer ego to also nurture confidence. And so we're going to be talking about that. So over the next couple of weeks, some really positive, empowering topics that I want you to make sure that you subscribe, hit the white bell icon, just so you don't miss out on those subjects, because I think you're going to find them really helpful. I think we should get in and welcome our first guest for 2024, which is cool, right? Like, the year is like, it's nearly March. Does that scare everyone? It's nearly March. It's crazy. But it is. Here we go. Right after this, Kelly McDowell.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
Hello, Kelly.
Hello.
So good to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. I'm excited.
We are new friends. We, up until half an hour ago, we had not met directly. We'd interacted via email, and so I thought we'd kick off by kind of allowing you to share who you are, and if you feel comfortable to, you can reveal how you came to contact, because it was you who contacted me in the first instance, but then I reciprocated with an invitation onto the show. Who is Kelly McDowell?
Oh, so yeah, I'm over in the U.S. You know, a few hours difference from you guys. We've talked about, and I'm a voice teacher who's been teaching in the Midwest area for about 20 years. Recently finished a degree with Westminster Choir College in New Jersey on vocal pedagogy. I was diving deeper into, you know, the anatomy and physiology and how to further help my students with just more accurate information. And I was finishing up my work with Westminster, and in my thesis, I decided that there was a whole demographic of singers that did not have resources, the contemporary Christian singers, who who share a lot of characteristics
Yeah.
with pop singers and
Yeah.
folk and jazz and I mean all these different genres. Of course, they all borrow from each other.
Yeah.
So many different nuances, but there wasn't something that was quite accessible for the average singer to just pick up and read through and use the resources to further their vocal education. And I stumbled upon, not stumbled, I was digging and came across some work that you did a couple years back. And it led me to a lot of your work, and it got us to connect as I was finishing up and elongating this project and turning it into a book that could be published and distributed, which should be coming out here in 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
Called The Voice of Worship. Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
That should be available soon. And you can go to my website, fmvoicestudio.com, and get more information about that.
At the bottom down there.
There we go.
That's awesome. And it's such a big project to write a book, right?
Apparently, yes. You know, you think I can, sure. And then, my goodness.
So when
they have lead times for a reason.
Yeah. I'm always just amazed at prolific writers, like people who are, seem to release a new book every 6 months, and you go, how? Like, how are you doing that?
Absolutely.
I don't know. But there are those who walk among us who manage to. So just doing one, I think, is amazing. So I wish you all the best with the release of that.
Thank you.
We're not going to be focusing in on church singers today, though. And as much as you and I could sit here and wax lyrical until the cows come home about the contemporary worship singer, we're not looking, because the subject we're going to look at today, and church singers would be advantaged by the topic, but we're going to be a bit more broader in our application today. When I asked you, what are you passionate about and what are you interested in, you came back with we might get into talking about head voice and resonance strategies, but I particularly was taken with your interest in the tongue and the influence of the tongue on resonance, and I'm looking forward to unpacking that with you today. It was kind of providential, because I had literally, when I got your email, I had literally just had a lesson with a student where we had really deep dived and really focused on the tongue and its implication on resonance and vowel shape and all of the above. So I thought that would be a good place for us to start. Let's kick off with this. Why do you find the tongue such an interesting area of voice?
I think because in our everyday lives and just moving about, there's so many things that we think about. There's so many things that we are focused on, and whoever stops to think about the tongue? And yet, when you're singing, it's taking up so much space in the mouth, and the part that we see, we only see 1/3 of the tongue, and so it's for those singers that haven't spent maybe several years or a lot of time examining singing and what's going on. It's very, for me as a teacher, I can look at their singing, not even hearing their singing. I can look at their mouth, and I can hear what sound should be coming out based on where is that tongue at. How much is it covering the sound? How much is it shaping the sound? It has the capacity, it's again so huge, it has the capacity to just be in the way. And if you aren't aware of what it should be doing, it's very easy for there to be bad habits that you didn't even know could exist, because the tongue is just so automatic, in speech and in eating, and then you start singing, and it's like, oh, I'm worried about my breathing, I'm worried about my posture, and is my jaw open? And then there's this big mute sock that gets stuck in the way, and what do we do with that?
Yeah.
So and again, there's so much muscle going on. It's not just a benign object in our mouth. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you tell someone, your tongue's too far back in the mouth, and they're thinking, how do I get it anyplace else other than where it is? But it can change the sound in just a moment by these tiny little movements.
Yeah. Yeah. I find
So that's
I find the interesting thing of the tongue, first and foremost, particularly for beginner singers, is just becoming aware of it. It's as you just said, it's so often overlooked, but in part because, well, we've been using it from, it's a part of, a baby being able to feed from the very get-go. But then when the baby starts to articulate and form sounds, the baby's not thinking about tongue placement to do that. It's just copying. And so we do form into this sort of, it's almost like we're detached from the tongue, isn't it? Like we're not thinking, like even as I'm talking to you now, I'm not, it's all over the shop doing a whole heap of stuff, but I'm not consciously thinking about that. Do you think that do you, when you are working a student towards a greater level of awareness, how are you typically directing them towards that?
So I've noticed that our video has frozen. Do you still have audio?
Oh, so it has. Well,
okay.
The video has frozen, and I think that's going to be more about Zoom than it is anything else. So we're going to continue, and we'll continue chatting, and hopefully Zoom will figure itself out.
All right. So yeah, first when I'm working with a student, a lot of times it's as if the tongue is trying to curl back up, almost like a turtle going back into its shell. And so we talk about one being, again, aware that the tongue is even something that we can consciously control. And then talking about, okay, is your tongue feeling tight?
Yeah.
Are you able to move it at will? And one of the exercises that I think is very helpful is getting the tongue out of the mouth.
Yeah.
And getting it completely forward and just sticking it out, which is, of course, yes, exactly. And you get a giggle at first, and everybody feels a little self-conscious. And yes, there's a little bit of saliva maybe on your chin or your lip.
Yes, you got to wipe it away.
and getting it out of that stuck, curled up position helps to bring awareness to the brain and to the mouth that, okay, there's more going on than what I even anticipated or knew was going on. Yeah. And then even vocalizing with the tongue, being just on a vowel, to notice that, okay, the voice, the larynx and the vocal folds are separate. Yeah. And that you can vocalize with this tongue being in different positions.
Yes.
Now, certainly it affects communication and lyrics are not quite as clear. But even pitch, noticing that pitch can move freely separate from the tongue. Yes. And then working from there on maybe specific vowels. Some singers, certain vowels are more obstructed by the tongue than others. Yes. And I find that changes from one singer to the next. Yeah. So like you said, being aware of what's going on and learning to control it as you kind of play with different positions.
The positions, yeah. And I love that the way you're going about that is that going to extremes, isn't it? It's that I often use that protruded tongue activity as well. And that can be really great for things like tongue root tension and those sorts of things. Let's try and fix your video. As it turns out, it's not a bad shot of you, sort of smiling away there. But I'm sure our audience would love to see you, a little bit more animated. I wonder whether let's try. Have you closed minimized your window at all?
I have not.
You have not. Let's very quickly, because we can quickly do this, and everyone stay with us over the next just 30 seconds while we try to reactivate Zoom, and I think it's out of our control, but I think we can manage it. Let's have you hop off the Zoom, Kelly, and then just come back in, and we'll just pick up where we left off. Can we do that?
Certainly.
Very, very quickly. Awesome. And so we're just going to do that, everyone. We'll get Kelly back in a moment and have her discontinue. I'm just going to close that, and then I'm going to come back in. Stick with us as we go through the what is actually just a technical issue, and that's okay. Thanks for your patience, everyone, because this is such a fascinating subject, and so hopefully Kelly's going to jump back in with us in a moment, and we'll get into it, because I want to talk with Kelly about the tongue's not. We often think of the tongue as being something that's just a part of articulation, but of course it has so much other influence and impact. And so for example, if we do find ourselves going into tongue root tension, as I just mentioned, that's because often it's trying to get itself involved in something like your breath flow, and it can feel like it has to help out your larynx to support the larynx, and in fact, more often than not, we don't want it to do that. We want to keep the tongue up off the hyoid bone to not have it impact and sit back heavy on the larynx. And so I'm just hoping that, here we go. Hopefully we can have Kelly come back in, and that will be awesome. I think, here we go. Are you there, Kelly? She might be having some difficulties. The audio was fine, so asked to unmute. Just stick with us, everyone. It'll only take us a couple of moments, and then we'll continue on. Can you hear me, Kelly? I can't hear her, and I don't know why. Kelly, if you can hear me, I can't. Oh, no, the audio just got turned off, and the video isn't on either. So I'm going to continue here, Kelly, and while you just see if you can figure things out there. Oh, no, she hopped out again. So she might be having this. Isn't it amazing, though, that we can actually do this, and up until Zoom decided to play up, we were doing just fine. The other thing that the tongue really plays a significant role in is in resonance, and I'm hoping to talk with talk with Kelly about that interaction of vocal tract shape, which is in a big part influenced and impacted by the shape of the tongue, not purely for your articulation, but also for the way you shape a vowel, which is in part articulation, but also resonance. How is the tongue playing into that resonance strategy? And so that's really beneficial to do work around your tongue and the shape of the tongue. The way your tongue behaves, there is that, remember I was talking about with Kelly, the foundations of our tongue use being right back to literally from the first hours that you were born and onwards. And then a big influence comes about by virtue of your native language and the language you learn to speak, and that then the impact on the way your muscles within the tongue learn to behave and interact with the rest of the vocal tract shape. As as an Australian, you can hear a very peculiar, for some of you it would be peculiar, a very particular way that my vocal tract is shaped and behaves in the creation of certain words that you hear as Aussie. And hopefully here comes Kelly. Well, we're all got fingers crossed that Kelly's going to be able to rejoin us. And
Hello.
Oh, I can hear you.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay.
Okay. Can't see you yet though.
No. I cannot detect your camera.
Right.
Goodness sake.
That's okay. So I've just been talking about, and it will be still good to have you to have you talk to this, Kelly. And I'm just going to bring you across here. We can see your name. How's that?
Oh, great.
Oh, look, I can tell you, Kelly, over the years that I've been doing this live show, this is not by not even a close second is it by far the worst technical issues that we've ever had. So we're still connected, and that's a plus. I've just been talking about, the impact and the influence that we have. Oh, are we about to? Oh no, we just lost you. Are you there?
I can hear you.
You can hear me. Yeah, okay. I just lost your name. That's all. We're just talking about the influence of the tongue on resonance and the implications that it has on shaping that. Are you able to talk to that area a little bit?
On shaping the sound, the tone?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you've got a contemporary sound, when you're looking for something that's bright and clear, clear as in tone or in pronunciation, that forward placement is key.
Yeah.
Allowing the tongue to be, I talk to my students about allowing it to be in contact with the front teeth, the bottom front teeth.
Yes.
Which is kind of a challenge when you've got lyrics, you've got consonants that need to be, articulated.
Yeah.
The tongue's trying to do 100 different things, and you want it to keep going back to that home base.
Yes.
As it keeps that clear and forward sound.
Yeah.
Now with those certain vowels, the back vowels, with the ahs and the ohs, the tongue, it naturally raises up in the back, and it naturally falls toward the back of the mouth.
Yeah.
And that's when a lot of times you're working with a classical type sound. Your vowels all kind of lean toward that to give you an open sound, to give you a nice, more space in the mouth.
Yes.
As opposed to the sound going up into the nose, the nasopharynx.
Yeah.
And so that position of the tongue, like you said, helps to clear one sound over another.
Yeah. I like a illustration I often use with my students when we're talking about, because I too teach a default placement of the tongue as being tip of the tongue in behind the bottom front teeth. And but I often talk about that tongue position as being a bit like here in Australia, I would dare say in the US you have these as well, those robo carpet cleaners. Have you got those?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so the robo cleaners, they often have a docking station, if you will, and it, you know, where it charges and where it goes and sleeps, if for the want of a better way of describing it. But actually, its job is to be all over the floor space, you know, vacuuming up and going around furniture and doing a whole heap of other very nimble things to do its actual job. And I often refer to the tongue position in behind the bottom front teeth as that docking position, that place where we want the tongue to come in behind the bottom front teeth. But really, it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be all over the shop, articulating, doing what it needs to do, and then, you know, coming back and into that docking space. What about its impact on breath? I started to also talk while we were waiting for Zoom to behave itself. We started to talk about the impact of the tongue on our breath management. Any thoughts in that space?
Yeah, I guess not particularly. You tell me a little more of what you're thinking and how you manage that.
Yeah, so what we find is often tongue root tension will be born out of it's often by virtue of increased subglottal pressure, and so because the larynx is starting to want to bear down to hold the air pressure back, the tongue will lean back and sit heavy on the top of the hyoid to try and almost brace, and this is often in team with some extrinsic muscular tension, and try to brace the larynx in order to support the air. And so actually tongue root tension is often comes about by virtue of poor poor breath management. And so it is something that, particularly for contemporary singers, we often want to be able to really work on our breath management to ensure that the tongue, firstly, that we're not creating high levels of subglottal pressure, that we're maintaining our phonatory threshold flow without creating too much pressure, and keeping that pressure in check so that the tongue doesn't feel a need to want to grip back and sit heavy. And because that's often where you're going to get that kind of sound. So there are some singers that have made that sound their signature. And
always exceptions.
Always exceptions. I think in the case of tongue root tension, you know, because we often talk about our exceptions to the rule as being really something to be admired and almost sought after. I think I'm gonna say a very controversial statement here. I think tongue root tension is not something that we should aspire to,
No.
to create a particular type of sound, due in part that no matter who you are, and even for the singers who are struggling, who have created that sound to be iconic and their signature, that is highly taxing, highly wearing on the voice, and could really lead to some problems.
Certainly.
So I don't go down too deep a rabbit hole on that. Let's switch over to, and I know this is a challenge, Kelly, to be conducting this chat in the mode that we are today. But let's swing to, what about because I know that you've got a particular interest around upper registers, what a lot of people would refer to as head voice or mode 2. lengthened dominant sounds. What strategies have you got around? And if you please feel free to use, to leapfrog off the way the tongue interplays onto that. But well, let's start off by asking why do you have a particular interest in working this area of the voice?
I think that in the contemporary sound in general, it is more dominant in the lower register and in the lower pitches in general. And you take a song, any popular, I guess that's quite a generalization, but a lot of popular songs you'll take, and 75% of it is sitting in a nice, comfortable chest area.
Yeah.
You've got maybe eight pitches that are just, oh, we love these.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we get 2 or 3, we get into the bridge, the intensity gets high, and we're going up the scale, and we're going to take 2 or 3 pitches, and all of a sudden they're up high, and they're maybe a belty quality, but they're reaching up into that higher register. And as singers, it's so easy to just, we're going to ignore that, and maybe we'll just skip that part of the song, or let's just lower the key a little bit, and then I won't have to mess with that.
Yeah.
The original artist does it in this key, but really it's just better for me.
Yes.
2 whole steps down.
Yeah.
But we're ignoring a huge section of our voice by not training and not strengthening that head voice.
Yeah.
And because of that, we're not getting a nice mix quality or bridge or passaggio or middle voice. Again, all these different terms that vocalists use. But if you don't have, salt and pepper, then you can't mix the salt and the pepper. So I love to emphasize that the head voice, though in a certain list of songs you may not use it 75, 80, 90% of the time, it still needs to be there when it's time to use it.
Yes.
And of course that tongue tension restricts, can we hit those higher pitches as well? And so if that's not relaxed, and if we can't seem to control especially the root of the tongue, then the larynx starts to get tight, and everything pulls together. And I wish you could see the hand motions I was making right now. But that restriction and those pitches, just, they don't happen. Yeah. Or we crack into them because the handoff between the CT muscles and the TA muscles it's not a smooth handoff from the chest voice to the head voice, and vice versa. Yes. So yes, training the complete voice, and training the full range, and not just taking little bits of our register, is what gives the artist their full extent and the full color palette. That is so freeing. As a singer.
I think another illustration that comes to mind that I'm often sharing with students, and I've shared it here on the show before, is you wouldn't want to buy a 4-story house and only ever occupy one floor. There'd be no point. You do want to, yes, you might spend the majority of your waking hours in the living space, which is typically on one floor, but we do need to sleep and live part of our lives in the second floor, and sometimes we want to go up into the attic as well, or down into the basement. We want to be able to access the entire house. And it's the same with voice, isn't it? We don't, whilst in contemporary vocal, and I completely agree with you, in a lot of contemporary genres, we spend so much of our time in a short and a dominant chest voice, mode 1 kind of sound. Yes. But if that's all we ever did, even in those genres that are predominantly that's going to really boring. I mean, there'd just be no color and shade, you know, and no light and shade. And so I think, I agree, every singer needs to really have the opportunity to develop the areas of their voice. And one of the strategies, I'll be keen to hear what your strategies are. One of the strategies I use is I don't think I've ever called it this before, but let's just call it exposure therapy. One of the reasons I find that singers are so, particularly female, upper, higher voices, they feel so weak in their upper registers that as a result, they just never go there, just never use it. But actually, one of the ways you're going to strengthen the musculature that's required for you to go up there is to go there. Exposure therapy. What are your therapies? What are your how do you help a singer to facilitate? Have you got any activities that you do with them to help them explore and develop their upper registers?
Sure. Yeah, I like to use sounds that in our memory we don't think about them when they happen.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, when you start to analyze them, and oh my goodness, I am using a higher pitch. I like to start, especially if it's one of those 8:30, 9 o'clock mornings, and let's just sigh.
Yeah.
Just give me a nice and all of a sudden they go, oh, right, and then I might match pitch with the piano and say, do you have any idea how you weren't thinking about it? You weren't trying.
Yeah.
You were just I made a pitch, you mimicked it, and boy, that seems so effortless. And all of a sudden it's high.
Yeah.
As in quotations.
Yes.
A high pitch. And for the ladies that we'll often revisit it when a song starts to go up on that, we're getting close to a C,
Yes.
or we're getting above that C5, and it's okay, let's stop the song, just sigh for me. And then that pitch that was unreachable 30 seconds ago is all of a sudden they kind of, you give me a little look like, I just did that.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely.
Yeah.
It's there and it's accessible. I love to take students to that naughty little toddler on the playground. And we go, nah, 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 nah. And of course, I use that for we're finding some nasality as well.
Yeah.
When we're really struggling. You talk like a little kid. You talk like Mickey Mouse or any cartoon character.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, our pitch just naturally goes up. And again, finding that moment of we're not thinking about it.
Yes.
And taking that brain away and let's just feel for a second.
Yeah.
And things loosen up and naturally just happen. It's playing and, like you said, exposure.
Yeah.
And that reassurance that what I can't do is actually there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That 2-year-old can't ride a bike until you put them on a bike and they think you're running behind them and all this, maybe 3, maybe 4.
I was thinking 2, man, that's a
very well, coordinated child.
Very.
That was not me.
It's not only a coordinated child, it's a very small bike. Mini bike. I love your and you use the word play there. It's a word I'm using more and more and more in my teaching is to encourage play with the voice. Yes. I think it moves us away from this, structured, intentional activity, which has its place, but equally so does play. That freedom to explore and experiment without the need to then place a judgment on how was it. I think that's so important, and I love your use of that term there.
And it even takes us back to where did we start making sound?
Yeah.
We, oh, I mean, even as infants, the sound, like you said, was not judged. It had a purpose, and it was to get somebody's attention.
Yeah.
And then it was to express ourselves. And so let's take out the thinking and the trying and the I need to hit this goal right now because
Yes.
that's what we've been working on for
Yes.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
And let's just make the sound.
Yeah. Yeah. And isn't it, I mean, like you said, it's not surprising to ones like you and I who are doing this all day, every day with our students, but often it is surprising to the students themselves when you remove, when you enter that simple play space, how things just come about. And it is often because we're removing the pressure and the tension and the tightness, and where we are just allowing the voice to be. And the voice is so capable of so many things when we don't get in the road.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Believe it or not, we're nearly out of time, and it's been I know you've been such a trooper. For those of you who have chimed in sort of halfway through the show, we had some technical issues, and we were able to fortunately get Kelly back. But Kelly's not, a blank slate. She just Zoom's camera for whatever reason hasn't been working. So it's been more of a podcast than a vidcast today. So thank you, Kelly, for sticking with us. I wonder if there's any other thoughts you'd like to leave us with around the topic of physiology and tongue, and also thinking about registers, upper register and what have you.
Yeah, I think, as we just said a couple minutes ago, the voice is so multifaceted, and you can, we're on YouTube right now. You can pull up 100 different videos and hear 100 different sounds, and it's amazing what the voice is capable of when the over tension is taken out of the equation. Now, of course, there needs to be tension to adduct and to relax and to get air pressure and things. There's a necessary tension.
Positive tension.
But exactly. But allowing the voice to just do and to just be, and there's a discipline in studying and in training and in practicing, and then there is a necessity to step back and enjoy. And I think just as much growth can happen in those moments of taking away the stress and allowing the voice, allowing the brain to relax and let the body feel. It's a delicate balance. And for someone who is wanting to hone their craft, you certainly need both worlds. And it's good for the artist to remember that play or enjoyment of the craft is just as important. And so when you start to lose the enjoyment of singing, then I think it's time to take a breath and stop and reevaluate and remember that what did we start here for? Why are we even on this journey? The head knowledge is so important, but don't lose the joy in it as well.
And I think that is a great way for us to close out our conversation. It is that returning to the joy, and it is too easy to become fixated on the necessary technique, but we can become too tuned, like focused in on that to an error, can't we? And I love the reminder there you're leaving us with, that that the joy of singing is kind of Well, it certainly was for me. And I hear that is for you. And I think for many people, it's the reason why we do this singing thing is because we loved it. We, at some point in often in our younger lives, we got into it because we thought, man, I just love the feeling of doing this. This is awesome. And
Yes.
And it's so good to get back to that at different times. Kelly, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
we stuck at it. We played, and that was
That's right.
And I appreciated your willingness to hang in there, and as a result, I'm sure that everyone who has tuned in was really able to take something away from today's discussion. If not your beautiful face on screen, but at least your wise words to us as we've been talking today. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Dan. I appreciate the time.
No worries. Well, you just never know what's going to happen when we go live, do you? It's an ever true constant. The challenges that we face technically. There's that old saying, don't ever work with, kids or animals. I've often said that there is a third one that gets left out, and that is tech. Don't work with tech. And the other thing I've said many times here on the show, there's a reason why more people aren't doing this kind of thing. More singing teachers, great singing teachers who don't do this, because the technical side of things, it can throw up well, put it this way, I've been doing this show for 8 years, and that's the first time we've ever had a video, freeze like that. And so it throws us some curveballs, but we're able to work our way through. Look, leave us some encouragement today. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the conversation, if not the visual aspect of things, because all you got to do was watch my ugly mug on screen. And leave any questions that you have in the comments section, because I know so many of you watch the show as a replay. And so hopefully you've been able to do that today as well. Next week, we are going to do a mini topic. As I said, we're going to be looking at effective practice strategies. Tune in, because I've got some things that I think are going to really help you get the most out of your practice. And then in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be having Nancy Bowes, and she's going to be talking to us about the development of confidence. Man, we could all use with an extra dose of that, couldn't we? And in a healthy way. And so I very much look forward to seeing you again in a week. I'll see you soon. My name is Dr. Dan. Sing well.